Hello and welcome. My name is Tom. This is the Enthusiasm Project, Season 3, Episode 17. Can you believe it? And today, guess what we're going to talk about? It's gear and equipment. Yay. And actually, this is, I don't know that I would consider it a follow-up episode, but it's like a companion episode to one from a few weeks ago, which was Season 3, Episode 13, called The Cost of Creating. And if you remember, not to rehash that whole episode, but if you remember in that episode, what I talked about was this idea that's really prevalent in the world of like online content creation, where equipment doesn't matter, story is king, and you can do great things with whatever equipment you have, a phone, a crummy computer, whatever. And I think that is an important thing. You know, that's a very important feeling to have, or an idea to share, because you don't want someone to feel like they're not good enough or they can't do something just because they don't have the latest and greatest equipment. I have said 1,000 times when it's things like podcasting or whatever, just jump in and get started with what you have, upgrade later, as your needs become apparent and it becomes more possible to do so. But in the meantime, just start with what you have. I think that there is a lot of merit to that. However, the whole point of that episode and that conversation, I won't rehash the whole thing here, but basically is that it also can create this entitled mentality, or this mentality of entitlement, where people feel as though they should be able to get super incredible professional results without having to make that gear investment because they have been told for so long that gear doesn't matter. And, it just happened 2 days ago. I think I got a message from somebody saying, I really love the Rodecaster Pro. What do you have as a recommendation for the same quality for about $50? And it's like, the answer is nothing. There's nothing you can get. Sorry. I mean, maybe you can find some kind of interface or something, but it's not going to deliver the results. You're going to be disappointed with it. There is nothing. I did a video last week that was about cameras for streaming. And in that video, it wasn't so much to recommend a specific camera, but it was for people who are interested in having streams that look a certain way. They have that, just a certain high quality visual production value, things that I would recommend looking for in a streaming camera, which included stuff like, a clean HDMI out signal, interchangeable lenses, good battery power, like, all these kinds of things. And in that video, I was very clear about in order to get all of those features in a camera, you're probably going to need to spend at least close to $1,000. And then beyond that, you can obviously stream with you can stream with your phone, and it can look great. But if you want these specific things, which, like that's what I use when I stream, it's what people seem to like the way that looks. And, we're kind of like in that discussion, these are your options. And so in the video and in the description, I sort of listed what I called low, medium, and high-end options. And it was funny because obviously like the low-end options aren't the cheapest cameras in the world. The low-end options are like $700-$800 cameras, $1,000, and the medium ones are $1,500 to $2,000, and the high-end options, $3,000, $4,000, $6,000 cameras. Like we really kind of covered the spectrum of that things that could achieve that goal. And then, of course, there's people who either didn't watch the whole video or didn't pay attention, and then they're leaving comments that are like, this fool is putting $1,000 camera as low end. I'm over here with my GoPro 3, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I am not saying that there's anything wrong with streaming with a GoPro 3, but you're not going to get the results that you're seeing in my videos and you need this equipment to do that. And that's where I think there's a huge problem is people, I don't care if you're making your whole channel with your phone or whatever. Like I've been blown away by stuff I've seen on phones and webcams and all that. But if you want these specific results, and there are people who have put in hours learning how to use their equipment, they've saved up and invested thousands of dollars to get that equipment, and then you think that you should be able to get those same results without having to do any of that, you're not going to be able to. It's just fact of the matter. And it seems like maybe because we're going into the holiday season, or I don't know what it is, but it seems like over the past couple of weeks, I've been getting so many recommendations, not so many requests for recommendations, I should say, for cameras. And, it's kind of this really common thing of, for some reason, it's about $400 to $500 is like where everybody's budget is. I want to get a camera. I want something decent. What can I get started with for $400 or $500? And it's not that there are no options. There are definitely options. And if you go into the used market, you could bring down, what options are available to you. You could open up, I should say, what options are available to you. But I have sort of defaulted to, if that's your budget, don't get a new camera. Just save it until you can get close to $1,000. And then you're going to get something that is so leaps and bounds above what you thought what you would have gotten otherwise. And I've been happy to see that other people, like in the comment section of my videos and stuff, have been jumping in and basically saying the same thing. So I don't feel so crazy out here by myself. But it's like, yeah, you can get a camera for $400, and it's not going to be a bad camera, but it's probably not going to do everything you want to do. You're probably still going to need to invest, more money and other stuff to really get the results you want. And it's probably going to have some limitations that are pretty frustrating. And you could just sort of stick with your phone, which you already have probably, and save that money until you can get something really good. Because the difference between a $400 camera and a $1,000 camera is just so huge. It's remarkable. And the difference between a $1,000 and $2,000 camera, that can be pretty decent too. But then going from $2,000 to $3,000 or $2,000 to $4,000, the differences are there, but they're definitely not as night and day. It's much more like the average person probably wouldn't even notice. If you're really into this stuff, then you might be able to pick out on like, oh, look at this little detail, or they're doing 10-bit instead of 8-bit, or, these things which are noticeable to people who have very specific use cases or are really into this stuff, but not as much as if you're going from a $300 camera to a, $1,300 camera. Your results that you get are just going to be unbelievably different. And so that's kind of, the thesis behind that whole episode was, sometimes if you want to create something, you do have to invest that money to get the results that you need. And while it is important to remember that your story or your purpose or whatever you want to call it should be your driving force behind whatever you're making, that doesn't mean that you are entitled to getting professional level results, the same results as people who have invested time and money to get them, without doing any of that yourself. It's very, very important. But today's episode, the flip side to that is, sometimes it is a good idea to just maybe invest less money in other little things. And what I mean by that is, as you may or may not know, if you've been following this podcast, I have had like this, I don't want to call it a love-hate relationship, but a confusing relationship with the Sony a7S III, which is a very popular new camera that came out last summer. And it's, in terms of image quality, just unreal. Autofocus, all the features. It's like the perfect video camera, basically. But it is very expensive. The camera body by itself is about $3,500, $3,600. And then memory cards for it are pretty expensive. It also shoots huge file sizes, which you can work with. And it really affects your post-production workflow, I should say. And of course, if you're like me and you don't have any Sony cameras, then you got to get in the world of Sony lenses. And it'd be for me to get that camera, it wouldn't just be the cost of the camera, which is $3,500, and that's pretty steep, but it'd be all the peripherals to go with it. So it'd be closer to probably like $6,000 when all is said and done. And that is more money than I'm willing to spend. So that's why I haven't gotten it. And I think that the camera is super cool. I just don't think it's for me. But it has also been hyped up in this way that is just like absurd. And I know people are getting it. People are really excited. And there are a lot of people who waited like 3 or 4 years for this release to come out because it kind of solved a bunch of pain points that they were dealing with prior to that. And, I completely understand that excitement for something like that. But it's also been this thing where it's like, I feel as though there are a lot of people who are almost feeling pushed to like, well, I guess now I have to spend $4,000 on a camera, $5,000, $6,000 on a setup just to be at, the bare minimum level, which is why, I do want to rein it in and go like, yes, you do need to invest in your gear, but, there is stuff like my camera, the EOS R, it's a couple years old. You can get it for about $1,600 now. That's still a pretty significant investment, but it's It's way more affordable, way more achievable than the than $6,000, $5,000. I guess if you put in a lens, you'd be in the $2,000, $3,000 price range. But it's still, you can get camera lens, memory cards for hundreds of dollars less than the cost of just the Sony camera body. That doesn't necessarily mean that this camera would do everything you need it to do, though. So it's very important to pay attention to what your needs are. If you already have an ecosystem of equipment, lenses, batteries, that kind of stuff plays into it, of course, too. But you don't always need the latest and greatest. And beyond that, sometimes those upgrades, once you've hit that point, I would say once you have something around, like the level of an EOS R or a, even something like a 90D or I don't know what the Sony equivalent, a Sony A7 III, I guess, would be. Once you're in kind of that range, which is like the mid-level range of cameras, you will notice a difference if you upgrade to, from a $2,000 camera to a $4,000 camera. But like I said a few minutes ago, it's not going to be an absolute night and day difference, especially for your viewer. Maybe for you as the person making stuff, there might be like some friction that is relieved because, there's newer things out and new features and new abilities, but the end result isn't going to be the same as, when you went from a $400 camera to your $2,000 camera. And there's probably, this is kind of my main point that I'm eventually going to get to, there's probably things you can invest in that aren't as expensive that will have a greater impact on your final result, the quality of your final product. And the reason I brought this up is because, I've been sort of like, I've been doing all these mental gymnastics to go like, okay, how, I'm so curious about this Sony camera. Would it make sense? Blah, 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 blah. And then I was looking at a post from Valentina V on Twitter, who I highly recommend, V spelled VEE. Check her out. She's an incredible, professional filmmaker, video production person. And she shared this thing from an Apple event that she helped shoot over the summer, one of their virtual events. And it was the lighting setup that she put together for this person's segment. And she was explaining okay, here's the key light and the fill light, and we're setting it up like this. And then she had these really small lights. I think she was using, I forget what they were. They're small little aperture lights, kind of like little spotlights. And she had a few of them, and she was setting one off in the corner to kind of wash out the background a little bit. And then she was setting another one pointing at the back of the person, not so much as a hair light, but as kind of a really intense rim light. So around the edge of the person, there'd be a nice ring of light separating them from the background. And it looked really great. And I was like, gosh, that looks really good. Doesn't matter what camera you're using there. This lighting setup looks so good. And last summer, I bought the Intelitech Pocket Canon Mini, which is kind of a similar version to the light she was using in the video. It's this little tiny LED light, has barn doors on it. It's super bright, but it's kind of the barn doors make it almost like a little spotlight. And I've been using it as my hair light. I mounted it to my ceiling, and I did buy a little softbox for it to diffuse it. And I love that light, but I've been kind of not bummed because I love it, but bummed that it's attached to my ceiling permanently. So it never gets taken down or used anywhere else. And I was like, gosh, that light's really cool. And then I looked up, B&H had it for $150. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to get a second one of those. So I ordered it. The light comes with battery and charger. It's a really cool little setup. It's a super high quality, all metal light. This sounds like a commercial. It's not. It's a really great light. And having that has been awesome because now I can do more, not just for myself, when I'm doing talking head videos or streams or anything, I can have kind of that very intense rim light like she had in her Apple event, which I thought looked really good. But I can also do that since I do a lot of product photography and, device photography, I guess. I can use that in that B-roll footage as well and make those things really stand out and make them really pop. And I didn't even consider that when I bought it because I was thinking of using it only on human subjects, which sounds like a weird experiment, but you can also use it on inanimate objects and for photo shoots. And I was just like, wow, this $150, I don't know, bang for the buck, I don't know what has been greater recently because there's just so much now that I can do with this tool. And that's what really struck me was, thinking about cameras and this, that, and the other thing. I am very confident that the improvement to production quality that $150 light brought to my videos far exceeded what you would have noticed from me upgrading to a $4,000 camera. So spending another $2,000 or $2,400 beyond. My chest just made a weird noise. I don't know if you heard that, but spending, if my camera costs $1,700 and another camera upgrade is $3,600, that's a lot of money. And I don't think you would have noticed the immediate difference, the immediate boost in production quality as for me just incorporating this $150 light into my setup. So that was, that's something I've known, but it's been a long time since I've had, a practical experience of something like that. It's almost like buying a C-stand where I'm like, this is $110 and it changes the way that I've done everything. And, much more so than some more expensive piece of gear would do. So what I decided to do was ask everyone who, watches and listens what their best investments towards creative endeavors have been. So whether it's a podcast or YouTube channel or both. And I didn't really limit it. So I didn't say it can't be a camera or anything like that. But I'm really curious for people who make stuff, what is the best money you have invested so far on gear, subscriptions, services, whatever? So I posted that question on my YouTube community page, and I also posted it on Twitter. And today I want to go through and share some of those responses, share my thoughts about how people invested their money, and hopefully then share with you some great ideas of ways that you might practically be able to invest money in whatever it is that you are working to create. So I've been trying to make better use of the community tab on YouTube, which is actually pretty cool because it lets you interact without having me to make a video. So I don't have to film and edit a video, and then I get the benefit of the community tab. So that's where I posted a thing asking about, what equipment has been helpful for people. So here are a few of the responses that I thought, kind of exemplified what we're talking about here. So thanks to everyone who sent them in. And I apologize in advance if I butcher your name. But Tazawa Tanks said, for me, the best investments have been my MacBook Pro and my cameras. I went from 0 to 10,000 subscribers filming and editing only on my iPhone. When I upgraded to mirrorless cameras and my MacBook for editing, my production quality significantly improved, and today I eclipsed 50,000 subs. Well, first of all, congratulations. That's amazing. That's amazing on a bunch of levels. 0 to 10,000 using only your phone for all of production is incredible. And that kind of shows the first part of what we were talking about today, which is that you can do really great things with basic equipment. But I like that then you decided to up your value and you put in the money and the effort to get the computer and the camera to keep going. And that has boosted your channel now by 40,000 subscribers. So again, congratulations on that. I found out just recently, one of my favorite YouTube channels is Adam the Woo, or what's it? It's the Daily Woo. I forget what the name of his actual channel is, but he's great. He does a lot of like theme parky kind of like roadside attractions, sort of travel-y things. The videos are like pretty simple. He's super nice and just super fun and engaging to see. And the cool part is I didn't realize until this summer that a lot of what he does, he literally like edits on his phone. And sometimes he uses like a Sony camera, and he has this little Sony point and shoot camera, and he uses an adapter to bring it into his phone and then edits from there and uploads there. And his channel's like, 500,000 subscribers or something. So obviously, when we do talk about content and story being king, that is a thing that, resonates with people. Is what is the whole point of this thing? No one cares how shallow the depth of field is or how beautiful the lighting is if they don't actually care about the content in the first place. But it's important to like strike that balance with what works for you, and that's everybody's needs and workflows are always going to be just a little bit different. Next up on YouTube, I've got Patrick Rambles, which if you haven't checked out Patrick's channel, just search up Patrick Rambles on YouTube. He's one of those people that's quickly going to become very well known in his space on YouTube. His channel is excellent. And especially if you're dealing with like mobile tech, iPad tech, that kind of stuff, it's real good. And, it's kind of like getting in on the ground floor of something that is going to be great one day. Patrick had kind of a longer response, but I think it's a really helpful one because he talked about things that have helped him, like the money he's invested that has paid the most dividends have been subscriptions that increased production quality, including Epidemic Sound, the Adobe Suite, especially Adobe Audition with plugins by Waves, Envato Market, and some plugins from Motion VFX to make videos more fun. Gear that improved my quality was the Canon R5, the Rode NT-G5, the Rodecaster Pro, the PodMic, and the Falcon Eyes RX18, which he mentions the last three were recommendations that I gave. And he said he recently pre-ordered one of the new small Godox ML60 lights recommended by Tommy Calloway, who, if you haven't checked out Tommy's channel, Tommy Calloway, anything to do with lighting, that's your guy to go to. Plus his name's Tom, so how could you go wrong? Patrick also says 2 more important additions for me, the Glide Gear teleprompter, which is a lifesaver, and the Prompt Smart app, again, one of my recommendations, and photo background paper. However, he says, my most valuable investment, this is going to sound corny, he said that, I didn't say that, has been time spent watching and talking to other creators and joining this WhatsApp group called TYU, Tech YouTubers Unite, which has not only been helpful, but also a great supportive little community of like-minded YouTubers with similar ambitions. People around us mostly don't understand what we do or why we do it, and having a platform to share ideas as well as setbacks and small victories has probably been the best part of my YouTube journey. There's a lot to unpack here, but I think it's very valuable. So subscriptions are definitely things that can bring a lot of value to whatever you're making. So like Patrick mentioned, things like Epidemic Sound for royalty-free music, software like Adobe, and gear, of course. Patrick I should point out, he has a very nice production studio full of gear at this point with Canon R5s and, background paper and all this stuff. I like the background paper was the one thing I chose, not like all the other lights and the Rodecaster and everything. But, those were bits and pieces. Like I know for a fact, as I've seen Patrick build out this setup, that, those are things he has upgraded and included as the need became apparent. As he needed a new camera, he had to search for what suited his wants. As he needed better audio, I know he got the PodMic and then moved to the Rodecaster, just to kind of up the quality of everything. And same thing with the teleprompter, especially in the world of tech, there's just so much stuff to remember and so many specifics. Something like a prompter can be huge. But Patrick's last point, which is actually not even a money thing, but a time thing, is just the time spent watching and talking to other creators in his niche. And that is huge. I can absolutely speak for that. So personally, when I early on in my channel's journey, I found this Discord group that was like a YouTube mastermind, is what it was called. And it was organized by a 15-year-old kid from New Zealand. And there were like 12 of us there, all different age, from like the 15-year-old all the way up to, I think, some people in their 50s and 60s. All different channels, just starting out, just figuring things out. And, we're doing channel critiques, channel reviews. That was really helpful. That was in like early 2018, I think, and several people from that group kind of have stopped. The group has been inactive for like years now at this point. But at that time, especially just starting out, it's really nice to be around people who were working through kind of the same issues, even though our niches were totally different. Our, like figuring things out was kind of the same. Several people from that group have massive channels now that are in the hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and they really kicked off and other people stopped. But having that supportive community was really great. This will sound like a shameless plug, and it is, for ytmastermind.com, because that idea is so valuable that Heather and I started our own YouTube mastermind where it's like a monthly thing. So we meet twice a month. We also have a private Facebook group for people to get, feedback, coaching, all that stuff. And the group meetings are really, really cool, even though everybody's doing very different things. It is nice to just have that community to be a part of. And, it is a paid service, but the fact that it's a paid membership really does mean that the people who are there have some skin in the game, and they're kind of serious about it. So it's really, really fun. That's ytmastermind.com. But if you don't want to do a paid membership, finding something, some kind of community, an online thing, a subreddit, a Discord server, a WhatsApp group, is really beneficial to just be around people. Don't necessarily go for the biggest groups, because if there's thousands and thousands of people, it can be overwhelming. Go for the one that suits you the best. And if you can really build that small community feel, it really, really does make a difference. So thanks, Patrick. And thanks just for being supportive in general, too. I really, really appreciate that. Adrian Fonseca on YouTube said that his best investment was stock footage. I felt so guilty using stock footage. Initially, it felt like cheating. Understanding it's a tool to serve an end really boosted my production quality. I'm glad to hear that, because I shouldn't say stock footage feels like cheating. I really don't use stock footage. The only place that I personally find stock footage in my videos is if I'm doing that thing where I'm filming like a product in front of a screen. So if I'm making a video about a microphone, I put the microphone in front of my computer screen and put like textures and images and moving stuff on the background to just kind of do this like trippy background effect. I made a whole video about that. That footage is royalty-free footage from ArtGrid. But otherwise, like, I just don't really have a need for stock footage. And for a long time, I think I did feel like Adrian felt, where I was like, that's kind of cheating. Why do you need that? But then I've come to realize, like, there are plenty of valid reasons to utilize stock footage. I've seen lots of people who do video essays, and the things they're talking about are kind of abstract, or they're just not able to get the footage that would, match what they're talking about. But the stock footage actually does help a lot. And, especially obviously for any kind of narrative filmmaking or something like that, if you need an aerial view of New York City, well, right now, like during a pandemic, it's going to be very tough for you to get that aerial footage of New York City. And even if you could go to New York City, getting the permission to like legally fly, and like there's just times when, hey, stock footage is really going to save the day. And, it's a tool. It's just like anything else. It's a tool that can be there, and it's definitely, definitely has the ability to make life easier depending on what your workflow is. Nebulous Films on YouTube says, I would definitely say that my best investment was a good tripod for me. I bought a Manfrotto 502 head with 545 legs. 545 legs is way too many. I'm kidding. It's the model number. Anyway. And it's one of the best investments I made into video gear. I mostly shoot on bigger cameras, and the peace of mind that my camera won't fall over if someone accidentally touches the tripod is so great. Yes, it is crazy to me how many times I will see people, spend tons of money on their camera gear. They will get that super expensive camera, but tripods don't seem like the most exciting tool, and they'll get the Best Buy $40 tripod, which there's nothing wrong with that, but you're in those cases trusting thousands and thousands of dollars of expensive and delicate equipment to this $40 piece of like aluminum. And that might not always be the best thing to do. And once you do invest in a good tripod, especially like for video, tripod that has a nice fluid video head, the production value, the quality of your production will increase so much that you'll kind of kick yourself for not doing it sooner. My tripod that I use is also a Manfrotto. I forget what the legs are. They're like 055 something or other. And the head is a 701, which they don't even make anymore. I got it in 2012 and it's 2020 and it is still the main thing that I use. And I use tons of Manfrotto tripods at work as well. They're terrific. The 502 head, I have a bunch of those at work. Those are great. And they last forever. Like I said, my main one, they don't even make these tripod heads or legs anymore. There's like newer versions, but I've been using them for 8 years constantly and it's still working great. And that, I think in total, my tripod setup must have been, $300 maybe. Very, very well worth it over the years, that $300. So thank you for shining a light on tripods. I appreciate that. Nebulous Films. Gator's Breakdown. So this best investment was a ring light, a Rodecaster, a pod mic, all to be used while live streaming with StreamYard. So it also would include a StreamYard subscription. StreamYard is great. I recently moved over to Ecamm just because Ecamm gives you a little more flexibility and control. And it's actually cheaper to stream in 1080 on Ecamm than StreamYard. But StreamYard is way simpler, which can definitely be a plus, and also looks great. And it's so easy to bring in other people and stuff. So good subscription service. I think that's really worth it. Like OBS is free software, which is wonderful, and you can stream and customize and do all kinds of amazing stuff. And I got to give props to the developers of OBS, because that has just been a lifesaver for so many people. But it's also a very intense program that can be kind of quirky, and sometimes, sometimes it's worth spending a little money just to sort of ease those issues. And things like StreamYard or Ecamm, they feel like they have a lot of the power and flexibility of OBS, but with a little more stability and a little more, user friendliness, I guess we could say. So something like that's great. And then you're using the ring light, Rodecaster, and PodMic. I can't argue with the Rodecaster and a PodMic. Those things are great investments. Ring lights are cool. I don't have a ring light. Heather has one. I know they're really popular in like streaming and like the beauty community and stuff. But I was just watching a thing yesterday where somebody was talking about, I was watching a Caleb Pike video. He was talking about ring lights, and that he normally didn't like them because they put the circle in your eyes. It's a ring, and then when you look at it, the ring shows up in your eyes, so it kind of gives you this weird look on camera. It's not like a normal catch light in your eye. But it's funny because just the other day I was thinking like, I kind of like that, and that sort of looks cool sometimes. So I was thinking of maybe getting a ring light at some point, just because they are pretty fun and they can be super duper bright. Jumping back to YouTube, Carl Carl Y-E-H, yeah, I'm sorry. This is like the first day of school. Said for him, the Aperture 120D was the best investment. Pretty much allows me to light any situation. Yeah, I thought about getting one for my home studio, but it just didn't fit. The light itself will fit, but I would want the big softbox, and that just doesn't fit where I film my videos. But I have two of the 120Ds at work, and they're definitely the best video lights I've ever used. They're just so well built. They work incredibly well once you put that light dome on them too. Like the quality of light is amazing. I ordered one of the 300 watt ones for work, not for home. No room for that here. At home, I use the Falconized light because it's so thin, but I would, in an ideal world, I really do love the 120D. It's just a great, great light, and it's built like a tank. It will just last forever, and it's got this really cool, if you want to put a gel in it, it's like a little magnetic latch that just opens up in front of the light, what is it, the chip, and then you just put your gel and close it. There's no clips, there's no weird things. It brings in like a ton of flexibility to your lighting. I love that. But whether it's an Aperture 120D or something else, a decent video light, a dedicated video light, especially if there's one that lets you, add gels or change color temperature or something, have some kind of control over it, really is a game changer. You can definitely get started just using whatever lights you have, floor lamps, desk lamps, whatever, but dedicated video lights, the quality of light is so much better, and you don't run the risk of dealing with flickering, which is a thing that happens very often when you're not using video lights, especially now that so many lights are LED lights, but non-video LED lights tend to flicker like crazy, especially if you're doing any kind of slow motion stuff, and it can just mess up. So it's a great thing to invest in some kind of dedicated video light, and then you just don't have to worry about any of those issues. And, that peace of mind is absolutely worth something. So if you don't have a good light already, definitely find a light that's going to work for your setup. And our last YouTube comment for today is from Robin Hedstrom, who said the best investment was a set of Rode Wireless Go, which has helped a lot. Yes, the Rode Wireless Go is a little wireless mic system from Rode. That thing's amazing. And since that has come out, I've seen many other sort of like versions of it, competing products that have come out from other companies that are trying to be very small, consumer-friendly wireless microphones. And I think there's a lot of really good ones out there. I just kind of go for the Rode because in terms of this form factor, where you have a transmitter and a receiver, and the transmitter itself is a microphone, but you can also then attach a microphone to it. So if you want to use it as a lavalier or something, and then it connects to a receiver. It's super small, super compact, great battery life, great audio quality. I did a whole video where I did like a distance test and everything. I've used that thing a lot, and it is very reliable, and it works great, and it's $200, which $200 is, that's not no money, but keeping in mind that prior to that, all the wireless systems I had used were from work, and they were like Sennheiser systems that cost $700 or $800, which is not something I was ever going to buy for myself to use in my personal projects. But $200, which sometimes you just find them at like Best Buy, really made a lot of sense, and that has been so handy to have in my kit, the Rode Wireless Go. So I agree with you on that one. So thank you everyone on YouTube who sent in you sent in advice and input on what gear has been the best investment. I also posted that same question over to Twitter. So next, let's jump over to Twitter and see what everyone said there. And our first response on Twitter is from Gary Cantrell at Gary Cantrell, who said, for me, the best investment was the Atomos Ninja 5 to be able to record video without having to worry about the camera overheating or just the fact that I can stick a 1 terabyte card on it and just let it roll. I love it. Yeah, I have Ninjas at work. That's like where I test things that I'm unsure of, which is very valuable. I haven't incorporated one into my workflow, but they are nice because it's this really nice little, monitor, so you can see what's happening. You can do focus peaking and exposure checking and playback and all kinds of really great stuff. So just as a monitor, the Ninja 5 is great, but it's also a recorder, which I learned after I got the one at work, that then you have to buy like the little hard drive, and then you have to buy like some cable. There was more than just buying the Ninja itself I had to learn before it worked, but it does work great. And I have several students who love it, and it does basically just bypass your camera as a recording device and just takes the camera's information and sends it to this recorder, which can oftentimes process higher quality information. Not to get too in the weeds, but on like the EOS R, it can record internally up to 8-bit, but it can record externally 10-bit, 422, I believe. So, which clearly I never do, but if you wanted to get more out of this camera, plug in the Atomos Ninja, and then the R becomes much more on par with like the R5, the R6 and that kind of stuff. So that's a good one. That's a good investment. I wouldn't though. I would advise people not to jump out and get an external recorder like that just because you see other people doing it. I would wait until you're in a situation like Gary where it solves problems for you specifically, because that's when it's not going to be a burden, but it's going to help a lot. And then we've got Ben Tolson at Ben Tolson said, my teleprompter setup, the second person to mention a teleprompter today, teleprompter setup is probably the most impactful. I use an iPod with tripod mounted beam splitter glass. It's between that and the Elgato Cam Link. Teleprompters can be great. Like I have a video on it. I don't use it that often. Obviously, I feel like such a cliche when I say this. We use teleprompters at work normally when we do like our daily broadcast because it's much more of a multi-camera news style thing. They're magical there. Teleprompters for YouTube and independent content creation can be a huge lifesaver. It does take practice though. Practice for you to read without sounding like you're reading or looking like you're reading, and also positioning your equipment, because depending on where your camera is, where your prompter is from the person reading, will also, and what lens you're using and stuff will affect how easy it is to notice their eyes moving back and forth. And so you want to find something where it's not going to look like their eyes are moving back and forth. Ben mentioned he uses an iPod with his, which makes sense. I have my teleprompter, which can fit an iPad, which I always thought when the iPad first came out, people in Boston who wanted to go to the Apple store and buy an iPod, they must have just had the hardest time, because no matter what they asked for, it sounded like they asked for an iPad because of the Boston accent. iPad. I want the iPad. Never mind. Anyway, if you're from New England, I'm sorry. But yeah, the teleprompter can hold an iPad. And I was super excited for that when I first got it because the iPad's nice and big. And then I realized because the iPad is big, it was so noticeable to see me like scanning side to side. And then I switched to just using my phone, which basically the screen of my phone and the teleprompter focuses me right into the lens of the camera. And so you can't notice eyes moving back and forth. I don't use the teleprompter. I use it in maybe like 10% of my videos. I haven't used it in a long, long time, but it can be a hugely valuable tool, and not just for scripting, because you can also use your teleprompter as a display. So you can use it as a monitor so you can see yourself without having to glance to the side. And for video conferencing, that problem, or if you stream a lot, the problem of always having to look to the side of your camera to see what's happening and to see the other people, if you put that information on the prompter itself, then you can stare right at the camera while you're still looking at everyone. So for streaming and virtual meetings and stuff, a teleprompter can be a real lifesaver. Dad playing games, at Dad playing games. One of my friends for a very, very, very long time, many, many years, said a gaming chair, and then also posted an adorable picture. So you can check out at SoDarnTom on Twitter. Some people shared pictures of their things. He has some like awesome spacey looking gaming chair, like a Fortnite edition. That is a good one. I would say I've never had like a fancy gaming chair, but putting money into, your workspace is very smart. It's like shoes and mattress. They always say like you can never spend too much on shoes or a mattress. Things like a chair, maybe even a desk. I think those are great investments because you spend so much time in them and so much time with them that it can really make a difference. Absolutely. Homesick Mac at Homesick Mac said this light and 2 large soft boxes to switch in between, both for filming jobs and the new YouTube channel. And the light he's talking about is the Godox UL150. That is a nice big light with different soft boxes, because that is some of the fun of once you get into lighting. It's not just like I bought this light, but the light modifiers, soft boxes and snoots and barn doors and all the stuff, some of which are not very expensive, or like if you buy a softbox, sometimes it comes with a grid. Learning how to use all that stuff can really, you can have one light that you've invested in, and then you can learn to use it in so many different ways that is going to really just boost the overall quality of your production just from that one piece of equipment. That's a great one. So thank you, Homesick Mac, for that. Not just recommending a good, affordable light, but also the reminder that learning how to use the different modifiers for your light is really, really good. Gold Ranger, which is at Shin Gill, has a really interesting one. So the best money invested was saying, I'm subscribed to this YouTuber for $5 a month who gives great business/content creation advice. He provides contract packs, live one-on-one teachings, and private group community where he shares more information. That alone has helped me be a better content creator and help manage my time. That sounds like a very good $5 a month. I'm wondering if that's through YouTube memberships, like channel memberships, or if that's like a Patreon or something. But that's a good. I'm shocked he gives that much away for $5 a month. But I'm glad you're getting so much out of it. And things like that can be hugely, like a contract pack. If you've never written a contract before, or you've never dealt with a certain situation, and you can not have to reinvent the wheel and just get that information from somebody else and then just change it to suit your needs, I mean, gosh, that's absolutely worth the price of it. Plus the fact that it's an ongoing subscription in that case, I'm guessing the benefit would be too that as you grow, you can keep going. Like I did in summer of 2019, I did a $200 video consult with video creators like Tim Schmoyer's company. I didn't book it with Tim. I booked it with Delana, one of his assistants who does it. And I did a whole episode about it and like what I learned from it. It was great. I would 100% recommend that investment. At the time, I think I had just crossed 5,000 subscribers, and I was really, really trying to focus on like what the heck is the niche of my channel. And it wasn't that I got like the most groundbreaking advice in the world, but I got a lot of confirmation and a lot of just a lot of insight from an objective third party about my channel and my ideas and where I was going. And it really did offer some clarity that I don't think I would have gotten otherwise, or if I did, I wouldn't have gotten it for a lot longer. And so that was worth it. But the downside is that was one time, that was summer of 2019. So now we're in winter of 2020 and I have different needs and different questions and that stuff. And I can book another appointment, but that's another $200. Whereas this ongoing $5 subscription, you can ask questions now, and then in 4 months when you're in a different place or you have different questions or you've grown or whatever, you can just come back and have more one-on-one questions. So that seems like a great investment. I'm excited to hear. I'm excited about that. I'm excited for you. All right. Ditto316 Gaming at Ditto_316 said, for me, it's been the Rodecaster Pro. That's right. And my Sony Alpha A6400. And he also said, I made the decision to get the Rodecaster Pro after watching your review on it. So thank you. Well, you're welcome. I'm glad it's working out. I'm hoping it's working out. And the Sony A6400, there is a thing. It's very special. It's like, I don't know, like Harry Potter when they find like the wand that selects them or whatever. When you find a camera that just suits what you're trying to do and works for you, it's such a nice thing. And I mean, the A6400 is wildly popular. So, I know that. But sometimes it's not the newest. Sometimes it's not the most popular in the world, but it's just the thing that works for you for whatever reason, just the best. And that feeling is just so nice when you have a tool that you didn't buy because of hype, that you didn't invest in because of it's the new one and I have to, or a name brand or whatever, but you got something that suits your needs specifically and fits into your workflow really well and just makes everything you're trying to do better. It's just such a great thing. Let's see. At NW Lawyer, LYR. Yeah, okay. It's like figuring out a license plate. Said that all of the 100 plus LED lights I have, since without them, I'd have little to no content at all. I'm going to go ahead and guess yes. Okay. Yes, you can go to youtube.com/newlawyer, and that's a whole channel about lighting gear and camera tutorials. So there you go. You got to look at, it is true. Like, this Rodecaster Pro is a great tool, but gosh, it's also like helped build my channel in such a big way. Here we go. Rob Christensen, which is at Rob Christensen with a KRISTJANSSON, said solid live stream sound on a budget. So live stream setups are important, but sound. And he said the Rode Pod Mic, Behringer X1204 interface, and an Epidemic Sound commercial subscription. That sounds like a good setup for sound. Sounds like it's good. But yes, that's a good one, because people, when they do streaming, especially since it's so popular, there's a lot of emphasis on camera, a lot of emphasis on software, throwing graphics up on screen, posting comments on screen, building a cool set, RGB lights everywhere. But sound is just so crucial. It sounds like you've got a good setup with the Pod Mic, the Behringer, and of course royalty-free music, so you're not going to get copyright strikes or anything like that. We did a stream when I did my 40,000 subscriber live stream. I played with Ecamm to do the countdown. So instead of just starting the stream, like start and we jump into it, but I did like a 5-minute countdown so the stream could start, people could find it, and then we get started. And I just played the thing that originally, way back when, that sold me on getting an Epidemic subscription is they have specifically a ska category with actually some very decent music. And so I just like went to their ska page and played it, and it sounded great. It set the mood really well, and I got all kinds of good compliments as well for like the playlist, which is very cool because that, feels a little more like me and my channel. And, it's nice to be able to do stuff like that without having to worry about, copyright claims and takedown notices and all that kind of stuff. So that's really our collection of gear related recommendations and investments that people have made. So thank you to everyone, both on Twitter and YouTube, who sent in that. I really, really appreciate it. If you, this again sounds like a shameless plug, but I'm at Sodarn Tom on Twitter and Instagram, and sometimes I'll ask questions or polls or stuff, for the podcast on there. And then I'm also, of course, on youtube.com/Tom Buck, the community page. I've been posting a lot more stuff there as well, because I realized one thing I had been doing for so long was I'd record a podcast episode and at the end of it go like, hey, now I want to hear your thoughts about the thing we just talked about. and wouldn't get a lot of responses, of course, because the conversation is over. And so I was like, oh, I should ask these questions before doing, it's only almost 60 episodes in, before I do the episode, and then I can bring them into the conversation instead of like, you want to join this conversation that's totally over now. Not a lot of people are super psyched to do that all the time. But also, as we're kind of heading towards the end today, I do want to point out, you may or may not have noticed, I kind of hope you didn't notice actually, this podcast is no longer hosted through Anchor. And I know a lot of people, I'll do a whole video about it because I know a lot of people here host their podcast through Anchor, many of whom did so through my recommendation. So first and foremost, let me say Anchor is great. It's an awesome service. It works really well. I never had any issues with that. However, last summer, some of the team from Buzzsprout had reached out to me, and they were just sort of like, wondering why, if I'd be interested in something like Buzzsprout. We kind of got to talking about our philosophies about podcasting and the podcast community. And one of the perks was Buzzsprout is a paid hosting platform, but they gave me a free Buzzsprout account. So I feel it's very important to let you know that I got it for free, but it is worth paying for in that you get some more flexibility and you get to maintain control over your RSS feed. So when you're on Anchor, one of the benefits to Anchor is getting your feed out there to all the platforms is usually just like one click, even for Apple, which is otherwise can be kind of a nightmare to deal with, but is like the most important platform to be on. But one of the ways they make that so easy is that Anchor kind of then maintains some control over that account or that feed. Whereas through Buzzsprout, they guide you through the setup, but you are in charge of everything. And basically the philosophy behind the company is podcasting has been like this open thing for everybody since the beginning, the early 2000s. And there's nothing wrong. This is not their words, but my interpretation. Anchor is a great tool, but being owned by Spotify seems to be working to position itself almost as the YouTube of podcasting. And Buzzsprout is very much in favor of keeping podcasting like open and independent, and that it is kind of the magic of it. Whereas I have now seen, in the past couple weeks, Spotify has definitely made some moves to purchase other companies, start offering some exclusive content, and you kind of see that openness going away a little bit, which does bother me because I actually really like Spotify for streaming. I've been using them for like a decade, and Anchor I loved, but that last little push was kind of the thing where I was like, if I have the option to have a free Buzzsprout account and it's pretty easy to transfer a podcast over, I just went ahead and did that. So there's nothing wrong with Anchor. If you're using Anchor, it's great, and it's free, and that's wonderful, and no issues there. Mine went into this way more like philosophical, like, well, I feel like my values align more with Buzzsprout than with Anchor, and that was why I decided to make that move. But the reason I bring that up is because the biggest feature that I'll miss from Anchor is voicemail and voice messages. So Anchor made it real easy to just leave messages and bring them into the show. Buzzsprout doesn't quite have that functionality yet. So if you want to leave a message, if you want to send me a message, you can always like DM me something that I can share on the podcast, but you can also just send an email to tom@enthusiasmproject.com. Send me a written email, something you want included in the show. Maybe you have something to add to today's conversation, or another idea, or a whole idea for an episode. Or if you just want to leave a voice message, record a message with your phone or your Rodecaster or whatever you're using and just attach it to an email and send it to me that way. I know that sounds old-fashioned, but I think that's also like almost equally as easy as doing it through Anchor. So you can just email me your voice messages to tom@enthusiasmproject.com. And that pretty much wraps up our put your money where it matters conversation to just, there's a balance, I guess, between working with what you got, no matter how low end it is, putting in the money to invest, and understanding that if you want certain results, you are going to have to acquire certain gear and learn how to use that certain gear. But also there is that middle ground where the newest, latest, and greatest, most expensive is not always the solution and is not always the thing that's going to help you out the most. And sometimes there are all these little things, lights and audio and subscriptions and memberships that don't always cost as much, but can have a much bigger impact on your workflow and the final product that you're able to create. So it's just something to be aware of and keep your eye out for as you go through the world of creating. So as always, thank you so much for spending your time with me this week. Look forward to seeing you next week. Reach out to me at SodarnTom and all the things, youtube.com/TomBuck, or send me a voice message for a future episode, tom@enthusiasmproject.com. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.